I grew up knowing that I was adopted. In fact, all of the kids in my family are adopted. So it was always a known fact. I think my parents, my adoptive parents, were always really supportive. We always knew this growing up. We were brought up knowing it, knowing that, and it was explained to us as children that we were special, which is why we were chosen. Years ago, I did sign up for 23andMe. I just always thought, oh, it'd be kind of neat to find out if I have siblings or like your brother or this and that. So they have an option where you leave it open and you can see this whole family tree. It didn't give me anything immediate. Probably the beginning of 2023 was when someone popped up that was likely an aunt and likely my first cousin. And that was the first time I had seen anyone that was that closely related.
And that was the beginning of my journey.
Hey guys, my name is Anthony Luke-Akagi. We have got a special second part of an episode which we've been working on now for over a year. And that goes back to podcast number 25. This is part 2, where we actually are going to continue the saga of me meeting my biological family. I always had said as a kid growing up, when you're adopted, that it wouldn't change my relationship with my adoptive family, because these are the people that raised me. But I did want to know, I think more than anything else, about who my biological family was. Moreover, I think it was for health reasons and understanding what historicals, whenever you fill out a form as an adult and they ask you about, do you have any family history? You basically fill it out as adopted and it negates the rest of the section. Um, as well as also curious about whether I had siblings or not.
Jill, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you.
No, thank you for being here. So incidentally, the children in my family are adopted, including my sister. So it's kind of an interesting story because when I actually shared with you that I had potentially found my biological family you actually had a really kind of excited reaction that I thought was interesting. Um, what is it like also for you, because you're adopted as well?
Well, I think when you first told me, I was extremely excited for you. I thought that was really neat
Yeah.
that you could take this DNA test and then find your biological family because I too took one of those tests. And of course, I think mine is a little bit more difficult to find because of the circumstances of how I was adopted and so on.
Sure.
But um, I think initially, yes, I was very excited for you, and it was neat to hear that they live so like close to where I live too.
That was it. It's interesting because people always say when you're in Hawaii that the island is very small. And to find out that my biological mother was actually living 3 minutes, 5 minutes away from you was
Mhm.
kind of surprising, but also is that they were also very close to, you know, albeit on the other side of the island, but just from where we grew up. Um, what was actually, I mean, I know that I didn't realize, I guess, that you had been looking for your biological family, considering that I had tried when I turned 18 to petition looking at my adoption records, and at the time it had found out that the records had been closed. I wasn't able to actually petition anything. They were, it would have required my biological parents to allow those records to be opened at the time. Um, I actually didn't realize that you had taken a test as well in order to try to find your relatives.
Yeah. Well, the real reason why I did that was because I had this feeling that I was more than just Korean, and I was adamant about it. So I thought that doing this DNA test would prove that I'm something else. But unfortunately, I was wrong, and I came back, pretty much 100% South Korean, which I thought was interesting because they said no North Korean was detected, which is nice to hear, I guess. But yeah, so that was my initial reason for doing the DNA test. It wasn't necessarily only to see if there was any chance of finding biological parents, because I do realize that that's kind of difficult, being that I was left on the street and brought to an orphanage with actually no birth certificate or anything. But yeah, so I just wanted to see if I was anything
Anything
else other than
besides.
Korean, but I am Korean.
The Kwan family has been lovely and so open and so loving. But I also have a family that grew up with me and raised me and influenced my life. And so much of that was always making sure that I wanted them to I wanted you and Trislin and mom and everybody else to know, and Linda and Laura and all the cousins to make sure that they understood that they were never going to be replaced. And there were times when it was an emotional roller coaster even for myself, and because it was a lot to take in. I think we also got really lucky that the family that I discovered through this has been so absolutely wonderful. They've been nice. Every time I talk to Kenny, she always asks, "How's Jill?" Kelsey's always asking, "How's Trislin?" I was like, "I still owe Trislin a training program. I'm getting to it. I'm doing it. I'm getting there." So it's interesting because they always include you and mom in the actual conversations and their thoughts.
Okay, thank you for doing this.
No,
I think it's good to hear different perspectives and to be really honest about feelings and everything,
yeah,
because I'm sure, we're not the only family that goes through this. And fortunately, like you said, your biological family is the best. And I think that really helped the process.
it's
And
been
kudos to you too, because you're an amazing person that, really opened up to this idea. As scary as it could have been, it worked out really well. So, all right, love you.
love you. Thanks, Joe. Bye.
Bye.
Years ago, I did sign up for 23andMe. So it's the weirdest thing because it's so generic. It just says you have 15 more family connections, of which I've seen those so many times. And most of the time, in all honesty, I never checked it. For whatever reason, this time it was in my inbox and I looked at it. And it gives you a list. Like you have 15 new familial, you know, connections. This one was the first time that it said likely an aunt and likely a first cousin. So then I went to 23andMe and opened it up. And looking at it, I didn't know which side of the family it was from. And I know I sat on it for a few months because I knew that my profile was open, but I didn't know if they could see me. But I also didn't want to be disrespectful to whichever side of the family. I think I've seen enough stories. You don't see a lot of great stories about adoptees finding their adopted, their biological families. Not a lot. You generally will see it with siblings or like, um, but not normally with the immediate family that I've seen at least. So I was a little wary about connecting with them. So I sat there for, and let it sit probably for the first half of the year. I will say that every time I got a different notification from them as I did open it. Truthfully, as I was really curious about just my health genetics and what that meant. And being in the wellness industry, I read a lot about genetics and how those things and all these DNA tests, etc. So I was somewhat curious about it. So I actually decided somewhere in August or July to send out an email and just see what happened. I was hopeful, but I was very cautious at being, overly excited about it. So I tried to be as respectful as possible, not knowing whether it was my father's side of the family or my mother's side. And I did ask. I'm not trying to blow up anyone's lives. I don't want to ruin anyone's lives. However, I'm wondering if anyone in your family potentially gave up a child for adoption, in 1969. I actually didn't hear back. Uh, and I waited for a while. I waited for a few weeks and nothing happened. And then I thought to myself, I knew there are little things that you know when you're growing up. Like, I knew my parents were teenagers and I knew they were young. I just didn't know how young they were. So I sort of in my head figured, okay, they're likely of an older generation that may or may not be email savvy or be as tech savvy. So it's either they really don't want to, they're ignoring me and they don't want to have anything to do with me, or they just disregarded it and it went to spam or whatever it is. So at that point is they work, the two people that were showed up in my immediate family tree actually were connected. So I actually went down the line to the individual that was listed as potentially my first cousin and wrote a similar email. And then again, is I didn't hear anything back. So I live in a world where if emails are unanswered, no answer is an answer. As it may seem, I just assumed that it was all right. Then that was it. So after the first week, I sort of just assumed that it just wasn't a thing, and it wasn't going to happen, and it was fine. But then I got an email probably around like this is probably around the 19th or 20th of somewhere around there in August. So a few weeks later, a couple weeks later, from my cousin who said yes. This person this is likely your aunt who is this person, and my cousin who is actually your half sister is this, but we're wondering if you can confirm your birth date. At which point then I confirmed my birth date, and then didn't hear anything back. And then after that, shortly after that, then I got another email back saying, your half sister would like to get in contact with you. And then it sort of just spiraled.
I wanted to sort of, with this podcast and with this vlog, sort of put it together and sort of circle back to August when I actually sent Ari an email because Auntie Chris hadn't responded to my original email. Where were you? What were you doing? What was happening?
I actually went back and looked at my email for when it came in. It actually came in on my birthday on
Happy
August
birthday!
3rd. Yeah.
Stressful.
Um, and I remember I had just come home. I had like gone out with some friends, so I was a little drunk to be honest. And I was just
Nice.
like sitting on my couch, like just like checking everything. And I saw it and I like read it, and then I remember I just, like, locked my phone and, like, threw it to the side, and I was like, I
I
can't,
can't
like,
process this.
comprehend that right now." Um, and so I kinda just, like, was like, "Okay, like, not tonight." Um, and then it was always, like, on the back of my mind, but, like, I think probably, like, less than a week later, I was heading home,
Oh, cool.
and I was like, "I'm just gonna deal with that, like, with my cousin, kinda just, like, see." I didn't wanna, like, do it on my own, so I was like, "I'm just gonna, like, talk to my cousins when I get home."
Wait, did you already
Um,
know that there was a possible? Did you know
I
that
feel like
Aunt Auntie
it
Ken?
was it was never, like, fully explicitly said or anything. I feel like it was just something, like, there that we had heard, and it was kinda like, "Yeah, I think maybe," like, I don't know, but it was never, like we were never, like, sat down and, like, told this story or something.
Sure.
It was just kinda like so that's why it was, like it was a shock, obviously, but I was kinda like, "Wait, like, I feel like I've kinda maybe heard something, so, like, it could make sense." Um, but yeah.
And then, okay, so you go home from there. You're by yourself. So let me and drunk, and on your birthday. So let me apologize profusely now. But we're gonna blame your mom for not responding to me,
Right.
because she could have made it 1,000 times easier. But then, how
Honestly,
did?
I'm not surprised though because yeah, she wasn't keeping track with that,
Well,
the
what's interesting too
answers she
is
was getting.
it was my initial thought to begin with 23andMe that I thought, well, if I'm this age and my mother would probably be around this age, maybe they're not part of the email, culture, and they're not. super tech savvy, and that so
Yeah.
it's what prompted me to then reach out down the line where you had obviously shown up.
Yeah. Which was smart of you because you're absolutely right.
All right, so you go home, and then what happens? Because somehow the Tiana and Tris got involved.
Yeah, so I go home and we're having dinner one Sunday night. And I think somehow we had all, the three of us had gravitated to like the living room. And I was like, oh, perfect. It's just the three of us. So I like brought my phone out and I was like, you guys, like, I got this email. Let's let's talk about it. So I showed them the email, and then that was when we were kind of like, I think the both of them too were kind of like, wait, like I feel like I've heard this story before. It could be a thing. And then we were
Oh,
like doing the math. We were like, okay, yeah, so that would make Auntie Ken like 15 back then, like all this stuff. And so then we were kind of just like talking that out. And then obviously we were like, so now what? Like who do we bring in now? But yeah.
and Tiana and Tris, like, what was your initial thought?
Shock. I think the first thing we did, hold on, maybe. I think the first thing we did was Google you, or sis like pulled up your you right away.
Okay,
You're like, wait, what's his name? Yeah. Yeah. And you just like Facebooked him or something.
got it.
I I think I looked up the name on Facebook and Instagram and I saw your picture and I was like, okay, he looks like one of us.
Yeah.
But really the initial reaction was, oh my gosh. And then yeah, like R said, it wasn't like we had a formal sit down,
Uh-huh.
but there was always times, every year that she would have these moods. And so we kind of I think there was one time, I don't even know how old we were. We were young, um, where they kind of just briefly mentioned that, yeah, Auntie Kenny gets like this because she had a baby that she gave up for adoption. And so it's
Oh,
around
okay.
this time of his birthday. And so she just needs to be able to process it. So that was like the first time we heard about the situation.
Oh, wow.
Um, But
Marvin.
yeah, we didn't really know details. So when we saw it, it wasn't a surprise because, we knew something. But
Mhm.
again, it was like, okay, wait, could this really be him? We were trying to do the math. I was like, I think she was 15, 16. So we're trying to count
Yeah.
and just going based off of what little information that we had.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then yeah, we Facebook stalked you.
I think
So
it's funny because we didn't actually, I think none of us know like for sure what year Auntie Ken was born. So I was like, can I know the year my mom's born? You guys
Yeah,
know
yeah.
the year your mom's born. So
so
Auntie
we
Ken's obviously
didn't
older. I think
remember
she's
that.
like 3 years older. So that's this. And it was
Yeah.
like,
There was a lot of math happening.
yeah.
And I think the first message was not even like, oh my gosh, hi. It was, when's your birthday?
It was kind of interesting because technology is such an amazingly powerful thing, and it's also really incredibly fast at how it makes communication work. Because from the point to where my cousin finally answered me to the point where my sister and I were texting was probably about 48 hours, if that. And within 3 days was when I was on the phone with my biological mother. And that was, I remember I actually called my best friend and I was like completely stressed out. And I had worked all day. Oh my God, what's going to happen? I have to go home and then I have to call them. What am I going to do? It's like,
So, Kenny, I'm going to kick things off with a question for you. You had already mentioned we spoke. When was that? That was probably 6 months ago, the first time we met.
Yeah, that was
A year ago?
it was in August sometime, right before his birthday.
Yeah, so almost a year now. I guess what has transpired for you since our first podcast that we did, and after actually officially meeting Aunt?
I'm a lot more secure that he's going to be in my life. I,
Oh,
when we first met and on that first podcast,
Yeah.
I really was like, okay, he showed up. Now is he going to run away?
Right.
Fair.
I told him early on that if you try to run away from me, I will chase you.
That sounds like Anthony.
So
It's a genetic quality.
Yeah, that's inherited, I think.
we have a lot of those inherited things,
You
you
do,
know?
yeah.
Yeah. And
See him more when you
getting,
met him?
oh, yeah. Yeah. Way more.
Yeah.
I mean, we love shoes and we
Yes.
love bling, right? So yeah, there's a lot more than that, but the character traits that have genetically been passed on are definitely there.
I know. I wanted to ask you about that because I think last time we spoke, you guys obviously were just meeting Anthony for the first time, but even at that point, we're already getting the sense that he was a lot like your dad. Um,
Yes, very
what
much.
I guess what is it about Ant that reminds you so much of your dad?
His drive,
Mm.
um, his always wanting to have a plan, right?
Yeah, that
It's like,
sounds about right.
right. It's like, okay, this project, let's try this. Okay, that's not so good. Let's try this, and then let's try this. And he had us working since we were in high school, and
Mhm.
we went from baskets to air plants to craft fairs, vending machine. I mean, printing napkins and matchbook. It's like we've done so many things under his guidance, and Ant is kind of the same way.
Very much the same
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, his love of business and family, and it just is like having a new papa around. He kind of exudes the air of being um he's overall, he's so much like him.
So you met Ant, and then you guys obviously had a few conversations, and then you decided that it was time to meet. Although you were anticipating meeting during the summertime, right?
Yeah, right.
What,
The end of
what
summer, beginning of fall, and that's what I was expecting.
and like I guess what was can you put words to like what you were thinking or feeling, knowing that you were eventually going to meet Ant?
I hadn't really thought about it because I thought I had months to prepare.
Yeah.
And then there's this big surprise, right? I totally did not expect that.
You didn't see it coming at all.
I had no suspicions.
Yeah.
So it was
Ant
a
was
shock.
prepping me. Ant was telling me that you might try to call me and warn me not to take him on the mountain. So he was forcing me into deeper into the web of lies. But I'm
Oh
glad
my
I
God.
didn't have that call with you, Kenny. I don't know if I'd be able to keep my composure.
Oh, I should have called you then. Then I could have really known.
Right.
I mean, the family and everybody else who knew did such a great job. I mean, there wasn't even a hint dropped. So I was blown away to see him sitting outside and like, really, what are you doing here? How are you here? You're not with Jesse.
What was it like to just get to meet Ant?
You know, when I gave him up as a baby, I never got to touch him. They wouldn't let me hold him. I never got to kiss him or smell him or anything. So having this man was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm finally getting my hands on him. And I could kiss him on the cheek and hug him. Kel said, Ma, quit touching him. You're mauling him. But I just had to like make sure he was real. He was really there. Because I did not expect to meet him for a year, 2 years. I had no idea he would show up. It
Wow.
was the greatest gift of all time. I
Yeah.
mean, all of my dreams have come true now. I have no more bucket lists.
I was really nervous. It is the first time that we visually saw each other, including my nephew and my half sister. So, we had a decent rapport. So I think in that respect, as I was a little bit more comfortable. But just being able to see each other for the first time was really a nice thing that I had not anticipated. I think one of the most magical things when I go back to the first episode that we did is to actually hear Kenny gasp when the picture comes up, and you just hear her take a deep breath and just gasp, and you realize the magnitude of the journey she's been on, to finally be able to find out what's happened to the child that you put up for adoption. So that was really that will always just move me. My sister said, and this is like a Sunday or a Monday that we're chatting, she's like, after work I'm gonna go and tell mom. I was like, okay. And she did ask, she said, how are you doing with all of this? And I was like, I don't know, I'm okay with it, but I don't think a person can mentally prepare for because you really don't know what to expect. I have no history of understanding historicals of behavior or anything, so I was just sort of like, I mean, it's fine. But it is probably the best Pandora's box that you can ever open, at least from my perspective, to really sort of understand a different side of what I never understood. And I say that, and we can come back to it, but the difference between nature versus nurture is so much clearer to me now than it's ever been before. And to understand that has been so eye-opening for me. The person that I was, or I am today, is based on the way I was raised, whether it be discipline, tenacity, determination, hard-headedness, whatever, temperament. What I grew to understand through this process is really understanding how much our personality and how much of who we are is determined by the nature of who we are biologically. I can only imagine how difficult it was for my parents, and I think for adoptive parents, it's a huge testament to them to love on a child because they are a child, but also to be discovering who this child is going to become. I think as a parent of a biological child, you see certain things that you recognize. And I remember with my girlfriend Prima and her son, every time he would do something, I'd be like, well, I don't know why you're surprised. You're his mom. You see that out externally, but I never actually put it together for my own life. So when I actually got to the point where I was able to talk to my biological family and my half-sister, and you start realizing that it literally is like Tetris. It's like the pieces just sort of fit. As a kid, I grew up with anxiety that, going through adolescence and everything else became worse. And to find out that through this process, like my mother had the same things, I can only imagine what that's like for a parent to be able to recognize that in a growing child and trying to approach rearing a child with that understanding yourself. I cannot imagine what it's like for people who adopt kids that are not biologically linked to you to try to discover temperament, addiction, all of these things that may or may not live in a person's life but not have any sort of connection to it. It sort of opened my eyes compassionately to my parents, who I didn't have the easiest childhood or adolescence with, because we were always butting heads because I was so at odds with them all the time. So I think it gave me a deeper respect for understanding what biology plays in it. And also is, as you as we grow as human beings and we look at the way that we nurture those nieces, nephews, kids of our own, what we bring to the table. I love my family tremendously. I have the best family, the most amazing sister and cousins and everything else, and I love them tremendously because I've known them all my life. But I will say that I do feel guilty at times because I don't think for me it's so much the novelty of having this additional biological side of the family, but it's something that I cannot explain other than it's like Tetris. It's just easy. It's so easy to talk. It's so easy to connect. It's so easy to get down to wherever it is that we need to discuss. When I met them for the first time, and even when I met my mom for the first time live, it was this amazing experience because I actually got to my maternal grandparents' home, which is now my Auntie Chris's and Uncle Nino's, and I got to spend a little bit of time with them before my actual mother showed up, and it was really interesting because I never felt like I was on the outside, and I can only imagine what it felt like for them to be walking in. All right, so this is this person who's been missing for 50 something years, and then you're there, and them probably wanting to be protective of their sister, but also trying to hope that you fit in and that you're polite and accepted and genuine. But I never felt like I didn't fit. That it's the weirdest. I can't explain it. It was just super easy. Conversation was easy. They were super welcoming. Everyone was like just completely. It was a really great experience.
So, Auntie Chris, you were obviously, I think, just to sort of continue the story, the person that I had originally reached out to, uncertain whether you were part of my father's side of my family or if it was going to be my mother's side of my family. How did you guys find out, first of all, from Ari and the girls?
Ari told my daughters.
Yeah, Tris and Tiana.
Yeah, and we were out at dinner one night, just our family, and the girls were kind of just like whispering to each other. And
As
so I
girls
was
do.
like, yeah, I was like, okay, you guys, what's up?
Where was this at?
We went to some Mexican restaurant in Kapolei.
Oh, just you guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
just our immediate family. And
See,
yeah,
the
so
mother
they
gene
were,
is strong. What are they whispering about? What's going on?
yeah. My initial thing was I thought Anna was pregnant, and she's like, nope,
Oh.
don't even go there. But so they told me that Ari had told them, and so I told them.
What was your reaction? Did you folks already know? Because I get this sort of like, it sort of maybe we knew, but not really. And did you know at the time already
Well, know what?
that mom had put up a baby for adoption?
I knew that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know as a kid.
Okay.
I think I found out like maybe high school, or I was already an adult.
Okay. So
Yeah,
it wasn't a surprise. You knew sort of already by then. By
We
when?
knew, but we never talked about it.
Mm,
Yeah, it was kind of just an unspoken thing.
okay.
Yeah. But
So-
but when the girls told me that you had emailed Ari, I told them, you guys, we have to tell Auntie Kenny, because I knew that she would be really happy.
That's amazing.
And then I think I called you, Chris,
Mm.
and said, did you talk to Ari? And she hadn't even told you.
Well, now you know who they confide in first, right?
Yeah.
Or where they start whispering first. So you guys had Sunday dinner, and then you told Kelsey. Then what happened?
She
They
went crazy.
He was shocked.
She cried, right?
Right, immediately.
But then we knew no we knew Ari hadn't answered you, and you had just been waiting all that time.
Well,
So then,
I was waiting for months before that.
oh,
For me, right?
Yeah.
You were waiting for me? I probably deleted that email.
I just
Sorry.
assumed no, I honestly just assumed I thought they might not be, of an internet like it's like for me sending an email to my mother. It's like there's a very small chance that I'm going to get a reply from it. So I just thought, well, maybe they don't use email or, they're not in a job that uses it. So they're not accustomed to. So I didn't really think much about it. I just went down the line and thought, well, maybe her daughter is, of much more of an email generation. So I just thought, well, I'll just try.
Because when we did the DNA test,
Mhm.
we didn't really expect anything out of it.
Mhm.
I mean, we got our results back and okay, I'm 100% Chinese. It's
Yeah.
correct. And, we just saw each other. And then for me, that was it because I didn't really expect anything else.
It was kind of cool though, like when the girls first told me that they had gotten the email, they like knew your name. They showed me your Instagram. Like
heard.
we could totally like see all about you.
Yeah.
And all of us were like, he looks like dad. Like, you look like a young version of my dad. But it was kind of cool because we could see you were a real person.
Yeah.
So
it's so real that it was easy to welcome you in.
Yeah.
You just kind of fit in.
Yeah.
You came and then you became one of us, like you've been there all along. We just don't know your past 50 years back. You just fit right in.
Interestingly enough, is he was a sales manager, which completely makes sense when I think about my careers and how much I enjoy sales and how much I enjoy, talking in general. He used to, from what I understand, he was a musician and sang as well. Was a very good orator and public speaker. So for me, there were little things that I picked up along the way that I thought, oh, that's really kind of cool. But I mean, those are sort of like the three things that I remember. Most of the other things and connections that I feel, strangely enough, are moreover with my mother's father, so my maternal grandfather. I never met him actually. He's passed away prior to me coming, into this family's life. But from what I understand is he was a big sales guy for a major company in the islands and was very successful. Family was very important to him. Was a very big go-getter. It would have been really neat to meet him. I think that would have been cool. I think some of the things that I learned through the process, which were really magical, is when we did the first episode, I learned that they had actually offered to adopt me as a child and raise me as a sibling to my aunts and uncles, of which my mom just wasn't going to have that. But I remember being really moved by that, just the thought that a parent would put that out there as an option. I think because in today's world, I don't see that very often. Normally parents will help raise a child. So like the fact that they were willing to adopt me as a child and raise me as their own was really magical. Because I guess at that point, what I saw was that it wasn't this horrible black secret, which I didn't know if I was or wasn't. It wasn't this hugely shameful thing that no one wanted to talk about. So that was really nice to hear. I've never met him. Again, I just hear it from my mother and the entire side of the family that you're so much like your grandfather, which is interesting because they all swear that none of them are like him. It's a really grounding presence that is always there, and it's really nice to know. I will say that there are times that I have to make a conscious effort to connect to my family as well as my newly found adopted family. Because it's so easy to sort of, in wonderment and discovery, wanting to, just connect. Like, we're going to my cousin's, who is right up here in Pennsylvania, for the first time for Thanksgiving this year, just because it's close by. And I'm sort of looking forward to that because I haven't had a family Thanksgiving, sort of, aside from the ones that I've hosted. And that's always been sort of a mishmash of friends and family. Whenever you're in New York, you know what that's like. It's just been a really grounding sort of sense of pride and love and acceptance that is nice to know that it's there. It takes thought. I don't think it's difficult, but I do have to think about it because there's so many now, and my immediate family is already not small. The extended cousins and everything in my family is quite large, and then now the other side of the family is also large as well. So trying to stay abreast of what's going on in everyone's life and also staying connected to them is really important. But I do think that innately there are things that my biological family do just naturally that I connect so well with, that just really just move me. For instance, when I go home, I always go to my father's grave. And then when we went home for the first time, I realized that my maternal grandfather, my mom's father and mother, are buried probably less than a quarter mile away from where my father's buried, in the same cemetery. Which is weird because we're on absolute opposite sides of the island. But what I found so neat was that my mother and my half-sister actually went to my dad's grave when they went to see, her parents, and put flowers there that, my family now barely goes. And like every time I go home, and granted, I'm there once a year, I make a point to stop there just to pay my respects and, say hello. But those little things that they did are like something that I would do, and I just assume that that's just part of what our family does. We just do it. I drive halfway across the island to go and put flowers on my grandmother and grandfather's shrine. It's just what I do. I don't know why I do it. I just do it. But there are little things that just keep me connected to them, that also make me appreciate that. But I do have to make a conscious effort to stay connected to, my adopted family, my real family. When you meet the people that you're made of, like, it's an understanding that you don't grow up with when you're adopted. Like, you just don't, because you're already different. You're different from your siblings. You're different from your parents. So it's a piece that you get, because sometimes for me to say, I say this a lot when people are irritating me or they're getting on my last nerve: "You're really hurting my head." And she just laughs and she thinks she's like, "Oh, I so understand that." Whereas most people wouldn't. They'd be like, "What? What did I do? What am I doing?" It's those little things that innately just sort of are understood that make it magical.
Hello. Hi, Carly.
Oh shoot! Should we get dressed?
No.
Oh no.
You don't have to get dressed.
Sorry, my dad's eating a
Yeah, it was like go-karts and
Hi, Uncle.
What's up?
What's up?
How's it?
So, Uncle Bruv, how did you find out? Or when did you find out?
Yeah, well, so this is back when I was just third grade, maybe fourth grade. That's when I was told that mom is going to Big Island.
Yeah.
For college.
Yeah.
something like that. So it's like, oh, they never thought of anything about, okay, yeah, she went to college like that. But then it was that really, I was out of high school already, when she told me, oh, I didn't go to college. I went there for,
okay,
pregnant moms, one. So it was kind of, that was a shock back then. It's like, oh, oh, so you had a kid. Oh, and she was like 16 or whatever it was. So that was a big shock. But then when she told me, well, yeah, she told me that, okay, out of high school. And then I was at James' guy's house when we found out all about this.
Oh, yeah, because you were away.
So Ken, she was texting going, hey, I think I found my son from, and it's like, oh, wow, okay. Never really thought it'd come up, you look for him or whatever, but then it just came up. And it was like, when I was there, it was like, wow, that is so cool for her to finally get with her son.
Wait. So Carly and Jay, did you guys already know that Auntie Kenny had
I had no idea.
Okay.
So like it's funny because I think the first time this came up, somebody sent a picture of you in our family group. You did.
Dad did.
You sent a picture of Anthony, and we're like, man, is this like a celebrity who looks like our fan? There was no. I think he may have even he copy and pasted Auntie Kenny's text, so it was very my dad saying,
right, okay.
"This is my son from 16," and we're like, "Dad, what are you talking about?" I kind of blew it off.
Yeah.
But then later finding out the real story and putting it together of oh my gosh, that's he looks so much like, I feel like, our family, and that's how I remember now. You just sent a picture.
I pasted a text from Ken, and then I sent it to them, and it sounded like my kid. When I was 16, I had a kid.
Yeah, we were like, what?
Oh.
And I was like, Mom, did you know about this? Or I remember being like.
Yeah, it was kind of cryptic, Dad's message at first, and I was like, okay, is this some kind of this app where it was like, okay, if it was Auntie Ken or if it was a Quon child, this is how he would look. And then as we're kind of questioning it, then it's like, oh my gosh, okay, this is Auntie Ken's son. And I knew of it. I think that
I probably told you guys
this years ago. I knew of it. I knew that Auntie Ken had a kid at in high school and all that, but that was ages ago, and just didn't think anything of it. So when I heard the news, it was like chicken skin. It was just like, oh my gosh, wow, this is amazing. It's wild.
What's so wild is I didn't realize you up until that point, that you had been the only son. You were your dad.
Only boy.
Your dad was the only boy, and then Jay, you were the only boy out of all the.
Yeah, and literally, because I mean, even on and the only one to pass on the Quon name.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Kahai and on
no
the
pressure
side, and then Auntie
and then look what happened.
They're all holes, and unfortunately, Jamal and I can't have kids, so
yeah.
Pressure. It's like, oh, all right. I was like, oh, okay. And growing up, I was always around girls, so I was, 5 girl cousins, and even on mom's side too.
Yeah.
There's two boys, but
they're not Quons.
They're like, oh, nice.
Yeah, they're not Quons.
Another boy, finally.
Exactly.
For real. Yeah?
Speaking of when Tris had asked us to do videos for ours gender reveal, I told ours, I said, I so wanted to say something else on this video, and I thought, this is going to be memorialized forever. I cannot say what I want to say on it. Because what I wanted to say was I know you're a boy. You better not be gay because it's already taken. 2 times over.
It runs in the family.
I was like, and then I was like, can you imagine? I said, he's going to see this when he's 10 or 12 and be like, really? quickly
we just spoke it into existence.
Exactly. I was like,
he's gonna be family, and he's gonna be family.
Exactly. We're gonna be like, we got
If he's
this.
so lucky.
We're gonna be like, we got this.
Yeah.
He'll at least be fashionable.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Have him call his guncos any day.
Exactly.
I got really lucky. And I got really lucky that this family has been so open, from my biological mother down to my biological second cousins. You know, my biological second cousin lives here in New York City, was the first person to meet me, and I had no idea who she was. She had seen me, she had seen our podcast, she had seen my Instagram, but we ran into each other by chance at a physical therapy studio randomly in the middle of the day. And you know how, like, you and I both know how large the city is. It's the random chance that you're gonna run into someone at a physical and have the same hour time slot with two different therapists in the same place. Just never happens. And we recently went out to dinner, and we were talking about how I was telling my physical therapist, please tell me who that is. I have no idea how I know her. Later on we found out, but you know, I think there are tremendous opportunities for anyone who wants to go and find their, you know, relatives or connections. Some people will be open to it and other people will not. But I think you have to be prepared for whatever that person and that family is capable of at that time. Wherever these people are is where you have to meet them. Be prepared and know in your heart why you're doing it, and understand that whatever happens is not in your control.
So what was it like? I mean, Kels, we've already done an episode. We did the first episode, and I think after, you know, going through this entire meeting the whole family, is what was it like for you once we actually met? Because you and Cody came down to the airport, which David and I were really, really, you know, touched by that. You came down, it was late, first of all. It was, you know, I think it was a school night too, because we came in on a Thursday.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you, first of all, because that was really, you know, lovely, and thank you so much for doing that.
Honestly, like, that's what we grew up doing in our family. Like, we, long before the whole TSA and the traveling issues, we would walk people to the gate, and we would greet them. And so the smell of tuberose growing up, like, that's just like, it brings back memories of just greeting people at the airport. And I was like, you know, I want that for you. And honestly, it was like, I knew it was late, and I was kind of feeling like you weren't wanting to. I know after a long flight and having to sit, you guys are just wanting to get to the airport. But I was like, you know, this was important, especially because Mom couldn't be there. We had to keep it quiet, but it was important for me as what our family does, was to greet you and to see you and David.
It meant the world to me.
That connection. Yeah.
It meant the world to me. You were the first person that I got to give a hug to and everything. And it was
yeah,
which was really special.
Really, really important though.
Yeah. It was good.
Yes.
So we met obviously at the airport, and we had, you know, it was because of your planning that the visit became so much more of a reality much faster. You know, and what made you think about that, first of all?
You know, I did not anticipate that you were going to be on board. I honestly thought that, you know, we'll meet eventually. And you had your hip surgery, so I knew you weren't traveling, but I was like, you know, this is Mom's birthday. She's turning 70, and it would be so great. This would be the ultimate surprise for her if you could come. So when I asked you, and you were like, let let me see if I can work that out. I was like, oh, hey, this could happen. But I did not expect it on the scale of everything that took place. Like, you just made everything fall into place. But honestly, this was the best surprise of her life.
That's what Auntie Carrie said. Auntie Carrie said she's been the last, like, I guess, 10 or 11 months, she's been just like the happiest they've ever seen her, just floating around. So what has it been like to know that now you have a sibling? Like, considering that you grew up, first of all, as the eldest of all the cousins for many years, what was it like? And then being an only child, because you aptly pointed out that you are no longer the eldest.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, having you now is wonderful. I feel like life hasn't changed. It's just been better. It's fuller. You know, I don't know if it's because we're older.
Possibly.
You know, we weren't younger and, you know, bickering about sharing toys and things like that, and which I anticipate that we probably would have.
Probably.
But I think having come into this older, and you were a dream come true in a sense. You were kind of that unfinished business that, you know, he's out there and hopefully, you know, we'll find out where he is. But finding you and having you and being able to just share with you has made life that much better.
So we met in August, I think, of last year. And then my half-sister, Kelsey, came up with the brilliant idea that a perfect surprise for my mother's birthday was going to be for me to come to Hawaii. So, wasn't the greatest timing because I had found out that I needed to have a second hip replacement. But we, you know, 5 months later I was in Hawaii and we got to meet. It was really kind of an amazing trip. The first couple of days was just spent with my family, and my cousins put together a reunion, and we got to see all the aunts and everything, which was really nice. And the cousins who now have, you know, kids of their own, and to see them growing up. From there is, you know, I hadn't been home probably prior to the pandemic, so there were a lot of things that I needed to do to just sort of reground myself a little bit. We surprised my mom on a Sunday. So apparently that side of the family gets together every Sunday. They break bread. They have a family dinner. Everyone comes together, and it's just a really cool gathering of family. Something that my dad used to do when we were kids with my adopted side of the family. We would go to my grandmother's, from my grandmother's down to my aunt's, and then hang out with my cousins and stuff, and that was really neat. But we surprised my mom, so I went in and met my aunts and my uncles for the first time, and that was really neat. And then my sister Kelsey brought Kenny in.
What are you doing here? Oh my god!
We're hiking in Colorado.
You're such a liar. I didn't think I was gonna see you.
Surprise!
Oh my god! Oh, you guys, how did you do this? He's in Colorado with Jesse. He's going hiking. Oh.
Yeah. Hi. That was a surprise to her, and it was really neat because I was sitting outside, and I think in almost every instance that we met during that trip, except one, we were wearing the same colors. By chance, we were wearing blue and white, pink and white. Like we were always wearing the same colors, except for I think one time that we got together. And that was really nice. During that time, that dinner was absolutely magical. The family could not have been nicer. My aunt cooked up a storm, it was so nice. Hawaii is all about food if you've ever been there, especially when it comes to family. Like, you could have 50 people and then they've cooked for 100. So it was nice to be able to spend time with everyone there and get to know my cousins and their husbands and their kids and everything. They were quite lovely. And then the following day, we actually took my biological mother and my mom out for lunch, so they got to meet, and that was a really memorable, moment to see two people that I love tremendously, both be grateful for very different reasons. And it was really nice to see, for us to have lunch together and, for them to at least meet each other and to hear them say thank you for different reasons was probably the most surreal thing I've been able to experience.
And then Catherine, what was, I guess, the spec for Kenny? You've met Catherine. What was that like for you?
It was a very nice lunch that we had. We didn't have a whole lot of time to really talk about everything in depth, but she kept thanking me and I kept thanking her. Mm-hmm. So it was, I think we both realized that this is the woman that raised him and I'm the one who birthed him. And so we have at least him in common. Mm-hmm. And he's really easy to love. He's so much like us. He's been like, we had the puzzle and then he came in and put in the last piece. And I feel like our family is complete. I'm so grateful for the way that they have all welcomed him and willing to love him. He just seems to fit right in. There is nothing that's like, oh, where did that come from? It mm-hmm. just like everything seems to fit.
And so you guys had a big party. It was your birthday when he came out there, right?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
She literally almost fell over.
Yeah.
Surprise! Surprise! Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Auntie Kenny. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
The shock of walking into this small space and seeing nearly 100 members of my family there.
Wait, was the party itself a surprise as well? Or
yes.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I thought we were going out and I was finally going to meet Jill.
Okay.
My sister.
So, and,
mm-hmm.
I bought into all of it. It was, and I'm not very suspicious. If you tell me something, I'm inclined to believe you because I don't think that you would lie to me.
Right.
I don't even think
not before all this, right? Probably now you're a little bit more suspicious.
Yeah, like he's not going to be able to hide his next visit.
Yeah.
See, we'll just have to get more creative. We've already burnt one good story.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a book of tricks.
Yeah, Ant's pretty creative.
Yes, he is. Yes. He has made all my dreams come true. And I'm so grateful to have him in my life. I waited for a long time. And you know what? I don't mourn anymore. We celebrate his birthday now. We don't have to do any mourning. So it's like, it's the best thing ever. I mean, I watched the first podcast probably way too frequently, but it truly gives me the warm fuzzies. It makes me tingle all over when I think about him and his braveness in reaching out. Because honestly, if he didn't have the balls to do it, it would have never happened.
Yep.
So I'm just so happy with the circumstances and my family being so happy for me. You know, my siblings, my nieces and my cousins, it's just like everybody has been so willing to embrace him. He truly just feels like a family member who's been living abroad. You know, and now that he's home, we get to really get to know him and see how much he's like us.
Kenny's story broke me when the first time I heard it, and it's in our first episode. She was 14 when she had me, and she was, you basically back then, she was sent to a home for unwed, girls. She had decided against allowing my grandparents to adopt me because she knew she wanted to be a mother, but she knew she didn't have the ability to provide for a child at that point, the life that she would have wanted. So she decided that she was going to give me up for adoption. So she had me, and apparently is back then too is they didn't allow you. Once I was born, they literally, you were shown to her and that was it, and then you were whisked away. So in the first episode, she talks about how on my birthday, and through that month, she would mourn, and wonder and sort of reflect. And that for the, she's done that for so many years. And my sister has talked about how she noticed it, but no one really sort of got it. They sort of knew, but they didn't. But to hear that was just broke me, because to hear her then say, like, I mourned for so many years and wondered, and now I can finally celebrate, was just really magical to hear. And I think to tie back to your original question, prior to this, is know that there is that possibility. If you're looking for your parents out there, or your biological parents in any way, but it's not like that for everyone. Not every parent is going to wonder. I just got really lucky that mine did. I'm really excited to help support my biological nephew and watching him grow up into a young man.
How did you find out about me?
So we were driving.
So mom told you, or?
So we were driving to your mom's house, my grandma's house,
Popo's house. Yeah.
And then she's like, I have something important to tell Popo. And then I asked her what it was, and she's like, so when Popo was 15, she had a baby, but she had to give it away because during her time, it was not right for her to have a child at that age.
Wow.
And she's only now.
So what did you think about it?
I thought...
What?
Oh, me, so
It's not me.
it's still an uncle though.
True. And there's another boy versus another girl in the Quon family. So we just met obviously in March. I know, what was that like?
Mostly tiring.
Why? We were just running you around for a week.
We went to the gym every single day.
I know, but that's a good thing.
I guess, but
all right. I did wake you up at 7 a.m. in the morning and dragged you to the gym. Wow. Oh, easy. So that means you can absolutely deadlift. You can
I'm really excited to be able to support them in different ways to help them grow. You know, my niece, who is the love of my life, is doing so well in college, you know, and she's had an amazing time, and I've loved watching her grow up, and watching her go to prom, and you know, graduate and go on to college, and I'm looking forward to being able to support my nephew in the same way, and hoping that he grows up into a young man that, you know, the family will be proud of and he will be happy with. I'm looking forward to, you know, getting to know my cousins more. I'm really lucky that everyone has been absolutely brilliant. My cousins will tell you the best stories, and they're so wonderful and supportive. When we launched, you know, I recently launched a hot sauce company, and the cousins came out of the woodwork and were, you know, ordering online. It was really nice to have that sort of support from the family that I just found a year ago. And again, it just sort of all clicks in for whatever reason it does. And it's one of the magical parts of, I guess, family in general. And we have it all in different ways. Some are chosen and some of them are biological, but if we get lucky enough to have it, I'm lucky enough to have both sides of it. I'm very grateful.